Добрий день усім. Дякую за оплески, за представлення. Так, будь ласка, хто ще не прийшов, приходьте в зал. Це буде дуже, на мою думку, цікавий блок, оскільки мобільність нерозривно пов'язана з просторовим плануванням, з архітектурою і з містом. Тому я вдячний організаторам Urban Forum, що цього року панелі мобільності відведена велика панель, запрошені дуже цікаві доповідачі. Я вам коротко про них зараз розкажу, і тоді буду їх запрошувати. Отже, очевидно, що в рамках теми форуму, яка називається, що будуємо тяглість, важливо розуміти, що кожен з вас, який працює над проєктом, можливо, в кожному навіть архітектурному проєкті є невеликий елемент мобільності, як мінімум піший рух там точно присутній. Але я впевнений, що ви розумієте, що те, що ви проєктуєте сьогодні, буде збудоване років за 3, 4 або 5, а експлуатуватися буде років ще потім 10 або 15. Тобто все, що ви плануєте сьогодні, навіть в частині мобільності, буде визначати цю мобільність років через 15-20 і буде формувати цю мобільність. Тому дуже важливо застосовувати сучасні підходи, щоб вони залишилися сучасними і надалі. Слухати тих людей, які вже мають хороший досвід, мають порівняння різних міст, різних країн, мають нові підходи і не допускати тих помилок, які допускали європейські країни, європейські міста в розвитку своєї мобільності. І, власне, це допоможе бути тим містам комфортними. Серед транспортників, серед експертів з мобільності, фахівців з мобільності є така фраза, що в нас є робота, якщо архітектори допустили помилку. Якщо архітектори збудували великий житловий район в одному місті, а місця праці в іншому місті, то в людей виникає неухильна потреба їхати. Відповідно, мені як транспортнику потрібно думати, як цю потребу забезпечити. Власне, дуже багато питань, які пов'язані з мобільністю, можна вирішити на етапі раніше, на етапі просторового планування, коли зробити змішане житло і місця праці, змішані функції, компактніші міста, щільніші міста. Тобто є багато інструментів, як можна спланувати цю мобільність, зменшивши потребу в пересуванні, зменшивши вплив від цього пересування, зробивши це пересування більш стійким до природи, менш енерговитратним, ощадним і так далі. Отже, сьогодні в нас буде в межах цієї панелі 3 цікаві лекції. Першу лекцію нам представить Кетрін Холл, і вона стосуватиметься концепції 15-хвилинного міста. Я впевнений, що ви хоча б цю назву всі чули, а хто не чув, то познайомиться і про це послухаємо. Другим нашим лектором буде Бурхард Горн. Це експерт з питань, власне, планування транспорту, планування мобільності, екс-керівник департаменту чи управління транспорту, не знаю, як це коректно перекласти, Берліна, і з яким я мав честь працювати над планом сталої міської мобільності Львова. І третім нашим лектором буде Лотар Целлер, який зараз активно працює з містом Львів і з Укрзалізницею над стратегією розвитку Львівського залізничного вузла. Отже, чи може я попросити організаторів, наскільки я розумію, пані Кетрін буде онлайн. Кетрін, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Nice. Catherine, we would like to, a huge auditory watching on you, and would like to hear you, and we would like to understand how to plan these 15-minute cities, and maybe you can then discuss or show how these 15-minute cities could be introduced in existing huge cities like Lviv or even like Kyiv. So, Catherine, welcome you, and the floor is yours.
I'm really sorry I can't be with you today, and I'm also sorry I speak English, but that's about all I can do. Really happy to be with you in this forum, and hope it can be inspirational. We believe that Lviv and other cities in Ukraine can actually get inspired by the model of proximities. I'm not going to speak so much about the number of minutes because it's not important, but it's the accessibility and quality of life. First, I would like to introduce our team. This is our team. You see on the upper line, the Professor Moreno, Professor Chabot, and Florent Pranon. They co-created our lab. I know it's a bit difficult for people to understand. IAE, ETI, those are initials of the university, and 3TI is the name of the lab. That talks about entrepreneurship, territory, and innovation. And second line, you have our research group. We are a very international team. We are also a young team, and we have a passion to understand the dynamic in cities. And really the main question is the quality of life, and revisiting theories and models to understand new ways of doing it. We also have a global scientific committee who's helping us and guiding our research agenda. We belong to a school of management, so lots of people believe we are part of an urban school or architectural school. We are actually not. And my own background is in business science and social science, but we have guidance and advices from many scientists from around the world, because the discipline of city planning, city organization, city management requires much more than technical advice such as urban or environmental or transport. It really requires that systemic, holistic vision. That is driving us is this one. What do we want? Where do we want to live, and what kind of life do we want? And those different images show different urban forms. But behind those forms, you have different practices, rituals, behaviors, and that's really what we like to understand. You want me to speak about this concept that is known as the 15-minute city concept, but the overall topic is proximities, and it's high quality of life. Proximity is only a vehicle, it's only an enabling for quality of life. And this has been documented and researched for a long time. Here you see basically the theoretical pathway of all the other scientists coming also from multiple fields, such as Jane Jacobs. Jane Jacobs wasn't an urban planner. She came from social sciences and journalism, same as others. And you also have, obviously, architect, urban planners, and they all joined forces in that understanding that quality of life is really connected to the quality of your neighborhood and of nature, and of cities that are planned based on human beings. The most recent legend of that sort of path is Jan Gehl. You see here on the bottom right corner. Jan Gehl is still alive and is still very much inspirational, and is very supportive of this approach of creating cities that are good for people. That concept, it's because it's really becoming a global model and a global topic. And the reason it's happening is because cities first are using it. You see here different documents that have been developed around the concept. You see the document, urban planning document from Paris. The middle is around Ireland, and those two graphics describe planning theories and concepts for the city of Utrecht. So it's really a concept that can be applied to cities of different sizes, different topography, and different types of structures. Why it's becoming inspirational? I believe the first reason is because we have reached a point, and of course, you in Ukraine are facing another sort of difficulty with building up your cities. But for cities that have been created, we have faced a limit point where, because of the zoning, because of concentration of activities and lack of understanding of people behaviors, we have created areas that are not acceptable anymore. The urban sprawl, cities have extended, they are gigantic, and they are structured and driven by the road structure. We have cities that really now show predominance of car use and carbonized mobility. And you see, when you have a climate tragedy or catastrophe, or even when you think of Ukraine and the reconstruction of Ukraine, we see that the legacy of planning for cars is not the one that allows sustainable for human. Becoming really an important, and the benefits are being documented, whether it's on the environmental side. This is the cover of the IPCC report from 2022. There is clearly a mention of using proximity planning to reduce car emission and also improve quality of air and other dimensions. In the middle is the plan that and the program that has been implemented in Australia, in the county of Victoria. They've been using the model of 20-minute neighborhood, the habitat guideline for planning for cities, healthy cities. And then on the top here, it's a very nice, quite new graphics from OECD that is showing that to help cities, and I guess that would apply for your city, Lviv and other Ukrainian cities, four very big dimensions are around sufficiency, proximity, and autonomy. And so proximity is really one of the four dimensions of the polar of a city. Living in proximity, being able to walk and cycle and have access to function that you need is something that is not difficult. You don't need to learn that. It's actually the origin of the city. You see here pictures of Paris. When Paris introduced a lot more bicycle path, walkable path, and also redistributed local shops, public services, and pedestrianized schools that are delivering school streets, then people immediately occupy that space. They don't need permission. They don't need a policy. That is happening. So we see that it's something that is really easy to adopt. Also, you like us, we are very familiar now with applications like Google Map, Google Streets. And so the use of digital maps is really easy, which is also why you can organize your life differently nowadays, because you can geolocalize and identify where is the shop I need to go to, where is the doctor I have an appointment with, and so on. So the local communities totally understand the value. It's like a new story, a new city story. Then, of course, on our side, and maybe some of you students and scientists in the room, you may have noticed that it's an emerging scientific field. You see here some papers that our group has produced. They go from economic papers, looking at the new geography in cities, also environmental paper, categorizing and documenting the benefits on urban health, on biodiversity, on the proportion of green spaces and the mitigation of heat island effect, but others as well. And now proximity is becoming a universal dimension that other scientists are taking on, and it's becoming really documenting. We are really happy about that. You have heard, like we have, a lot of critics. Maybe you have also seen some fake news and also some people explaining wrong ideas about the concept. And I want to touch on that because we are integrating this as well. Like any new urban theory, it's a model that have people rejecting it or adopting it for different kinds of reasons. You see here, number one, usually an urban planning concept gets criticized and challenged because of people who are on the extreme conspiracy theory side, or they have a political agenda, and that's always happened. That has happened from the very first time urban planners introduced new policies or new ideas. Obviously, this is an idea, the proximity that builds on sharing, on mutualizing. A city is a shared space. No one owns the entire city. We all share the streets, the benches, the libraries, the coffees, and so on. So it's an idea that probably has some foundation in more of the democratic and social side of political party, which is why we have a lot of backlash from the conservative movement and the extreme movement. Then you have people who have fear, the fear that when we talk about proximity, they believe that it's a restriction, it's something that is going to limit their freedom, but it's not the case. In fact, most people have access to everything in short distance. And people who usually are not integrated in planning decisions, that are far away from their job or far away from anything in the city, like living in outskirts, in suburban area where there is no food supply, where there is no educational opportunities or cultural opportunities. And then the fourth group is, of course, our colleagues from science, who always take sides for or against something. So nothing really new on that critics, but I wanted to make clear that we are not ignoring those, and we totally understand that this concept needs to be explained and needs to be deployed. And the reason why is this graphic on the right-hand side. It shows the three dimensions of any urban project. You have the institutional layer, which is the city organization. They need to decide about public rules. They need to decide about political guidelines, and they can orient and support something based on the laws they vote, the budget they have, and the bills they pass. Then the blue line is the infrastructure. If you want to create more human-friendly streets, you can build infrastructures around sidewalk, around cycle lane, around lighting, public space, and people can use it. And so the green is the behavioral side. All of us as users of the city, we can decide if we take a car to go to an appointment, or if we take a bus, or if we walk, or if we go to the local shop, or if we prefer to take a bus to go to an outskirts supermarket. So institution, infrastructure, and behavior, those are the three components of a public and urban planning project. Much needed to let you know that you need to go beyond what you hear from people about this 15-minute city concept. Number one, 15 minutes is not the goal. 15 was just used as a reference point so people would get a sense that the idea is that within a reasonable and acceptable distance, but it can be much longer or it can be much shorter, people should have a balanced access to things they need to use. It's not a magic doxa, it's not a magic recipe for all the problems. It's not, again, cars. It's actually a plan and a vision that changed cars, but has transportation in it, obviously. It's also not a strategy to drive gentrification. On the opposite, it's an idea to mix people, to have multicultural communities, and allow people to be really together. But then the last one, which is really what I'm going to cover in the rest of this presentation, it's not a self-declared model. A mayor cannot say, in my district, it's going to be like that, because you need to build it up. It's actually a construct. Proximity comes from aligning many different people. I'm sure you have seen some of that already, but basically this idea of living in high quality and having proximity as one of the drivers means that you live in an area and hopefully you can have access to a lot of things you need every day within short distance so that you don't depend on a car. And those neighborhoods can then be connected by public transportation or by other means of transport. So people can actually go from one neighborhood to another. The idea is not that they would never leave their neighborhood. The second idea is that it's built and it's also maintained around the needs of people. Cities are for people. They are places where people have chances to do a lot of things, some that they want to do and some that happen by surprise. So active mobility, decarbonizing transportation is really important for that concept. That places nature and green spaces at the center. So we don't imagine a quality of life in a city without a park, without streets, without small gardens, without balconies, without those places and a connection to the other non-human living species, biodiversity, flowers, bees, and so on. And city, the last idea is that it's built around people, so people like cities, and we want really to recreate a more desirable connection between people and urban environment. Framework, it's actually quite a complex idea, which is counterintuitive when you hear a simple phrase such as, oh, let's build a 15-minute city neighborhood. To get it done will require a lot of alignment and a lot of acceptance from a lot of people. Here you see, for example, different persona. There is not a 15-minute city or an X-minute city for a generic persona. What is the quality of life for a working mom that is raising her daughter alone? What is the quality of life for a disabled university student who is in a wheelchair? From a young entrepreneur who is really busy building his company, and from a retired couple. They all have different ways of life, behaviors, and so they have different needs around proximity. Shortly, because time flies, go through the methodology. Basically, if you are interested in the methodology, it's open source. You can access it online in the white paper number 3 that is here on the left-hand side. And then basically, there are two things you need to understand. A 15-minute city is an ecosystem of districts where you build those proximities. You build it up until you have your entire city, possibly, or at least a number of districts and neighborhoods that can offer that quality of life. How do you do it? Well, first of all, you need to take the ontological model that is really the characteristic of our ID. We want to categorize all the equipment, the services, and the activities around those 6 categories, because everything you do in a day, in a week, will basically be in one of those. You live somewhere and you need services around your home. If you only have an apartment and no public transportation, no postal service or banking agency of a small market and so on, it's a desert, and it's only a house. It's not a place where you can be a habitant. You need physical facilities to help you be fit. You need places where you learn and teach. You have cultural needs and the places where you enjoy yourself with your friends. Of course, you have the job market, and then you have the shopping. And so typically we use GIS, and a lot of tools have been developed lately around that. And we have built a model. So we categorize those different services in those different categories, and then we count how many opportunities you have. This is, for example, an area in France that was categorized with 2 parameters. We have selected like 20 activities and equipment that a young person, so someone between 25, would need to access in a distance of 20 minutes by bicycle. And this is what you get. So in this place that's on the map, basically you really don't have anything for well-being or for medical care, nothing for shopping, nothing for learning, but you have some places of work and some cultural environment. So that wouldn't be a very high quality of life environment. If you take the same place, the same zone, and you transform your persona into a single raising person with children and an electric car, you can see that you can go much, your area of opportunities is much bigger, so you have more opportunities. This is the calculation we do. We only use that to start evaluating the potential of proximity in an area, and to also study the inequalities between different people having different needs and different transportation patterns. City-wide level, but also at neighborhood or street level, we document and we create what we call a scorecard. This is an example of a study we've done in Buenos Aires with the local university and local stakeholders, and we have built 48 cards like those for the 48 districts. Right here that the design of a city that wants to support proximity cannot be only done by isochrone calculation. There are hundreds of isochrone calculation tools. I'm sure you know some of them possibly. Those are 2 of the recent ones. You can enter your city location and they will tell you how far do you need to go. So I have Vienna on this side and I can't remember the other cities on the right-hand side. But basically what it shows, it's how far do you need to go to have a bakery, a restaurant, a school, whatever, within a number of kilometers or minutes. That's not what is the only information for developing a proximity-related city. Because the second dimension is in planning the city. So the people from the city hall, people from mobility, transportation, people from the private commerce side, and so on, because they all contribute to providing those activities and equipment. You see here, it's a toolbox that is called the Fresk, Proximity Fresk. And what we do is we do workshops. Maybe next year, if we do a better job and I can come, we will facilitate a workshop with you, because those workshops allow us to collect information on people's rituals and practices, but they also help them understand how they can live a life that is more local, showing them that they could mutualize some activities, like if you need to take your child to school, you could share the ride with other people, so you mutualize transportation. You can mutualize a place if you want to do some co-working or some joint educational activity. You can also look at time policy. It's a driver for proximity. If you change hours of opening of a shop or public services, then you distribute the transportation and you don't have those high and low on that peak of traffic. And then the last one is around really being intentional around your transportation strategy. Any chance you have to switch from driving a car alone to taking a bus, riding a bicycle, or walking, or utilizing that ride is an opportunity for decarbonizing the city and also creating higher quality of life. I'm going to finish with some examples on Paris, because it's true that being a research lab at Sorbonne in Paris, we've been close to the city for a while, for 10 years now, and we've been able to help them implement some of those principles. And maybe you've read or you've seen some images or documentary. It's a significant improvement in the quality of life in Paris. And a couple of points here that are really important for whoever in the room is working at the municipality. The main driver for that transformation over 10 years has been the stewardship of Mayor Anne Hidalgo. She's been endorsing this. Professor Moreno has been his scientific advisor for a number of years, and he's been inspiring the team and her personally to embrace that change. And this graph in the middle is known globally now. It was first designed in French just for Paris, and it's been translated and copied. And here you see some before and after of transformation streets. But basically, if you come to Paris and if you have been to Paris before, you would see dramatic change in the types of streets, in the amount of cycling opportunities, in the air and water, in the life in neighborhoods that are dynamic and vibrant, not only around the working days, but also evenings and weekends. And also, of course, this transformation has been also accelerated by the Olympic Games. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Here, I really don't have the time to show it to you. I'll share the link with Irina, and you can have a look at it. There are many documentaries and testimonies of the change in Paris. I want to share 5 pillars of this transformation. The main achievement is that the proximity vision is now integrated in the local urban plan of Paris. So no one can change that. Even though Mayor Hidalgo will no longer be the mayor next year, because she's not running for mayor again, the next mayor, whether is on her political side or not, will not be able to change that pillar, because it's written and documented in the publication. And it's how the development of Paris will be structured over the next couple of years. And as you can see here, although I'm not sure you read French, the city has developed a lot of graphic material and also handbook and easy manual to explain how the life around proximity is being implemented in the different arrondissements or districts. So pillar 1, proximity is now a structure of the urban planning document. Pillar 2, which is one that has been also deployed in many other cities, one of the main aspects of the program is to change the relationship between children and the city, and children and streets. So one of the materialization of this model is around digitalizing and pedestrianizing more than 500 streets that distribute elementary school, so kids can be safe and can enjoy walking to school or using a scooter or a bicycle. So peaceful mobility, which also help them connect with the parents. And if the parents take their children to primary school, elementary school by walking, chances are they will also continue walking to their work or taking public transportation or a bicycle. So this has been really a driver in the switch of mobility from Parisian people to be using more the walk and the bicycle. This is also translated into an urban greening plan in Paris. And again, if you had been visiting Paris some time ago, maybe you may have thought outside of some of the big parks and gardens, the neighborhood themselves were a little bit mineral and dry. Well, now everywhere there is every chances to transform a square, a place, a plaza into some green areas, including a forest. This is actually quite big. It's in the 13th arrondissement, in the 14th arrondissement in Paris, it's one of the new gardens with actually trees. So you bring trees in a density in a neighborhood. So the city has really allocated money, time, and effort to developing patterns of plan And there are certain typologies of small to large green areas that include as well active mobility, and that is changing the urban life in Paris, bringing also biodiversity. And also to generate new economic modeling, which is really important because cities are also places where a lot of financial revenues are being generated. You need to introduce, and this is where the city needs to step in. There needs to be local commerce, local entrepreneur that help the neighborhood providing food or activities or services or experiences to the local neighbors, so people can actually buy things at their doorstep, right at the basement of their building, in the street, and that creates life, that creates also security. You know that you have people who know you and you're no longer afraid or preoccupied by walking late at night or early in the morning. And that requires that you really convert unused real estate or real estate that was used into multi-activity facilities, including homes. So building social houses and building affordable houses right in the city center and in every neighborhood, so you have also mixed communities and mixed cultures, is really important. That is how you develop something that we call the functional circularity. I live somewhere, I work not far away if I can, and I can buy and contribute to my local activities, and I know my neighbors and they know me, and that way you have really this sense of community.
Dear Catherine, 2 minutes, please, to be in time. Thanks.
That's the last pillar, Paris. So the last pillar is this process involves participatory and involve talking to the users using the toolbox I showed you before. And of course, you remember the Olympic Games took place in Paris last year, and a lot of the events were accessible and took place in the city center. And that was possible because the city had been pedestrianized and you could go from one side to another without having a car. And the whole city center was becoming an entire village area. So those are the 5 pillars for Paris. I want to finish by saying that it's not just Paris, it's also the region around Paris. So that's the idea of the polycentric neighborhood. So from Paris, we are now developing a vision around Paris. And I want to finish on this. This concept is no longer the Paris concept, the Professor Moreno concept, it's a global concept, which is why we've created a global observatory of sustainable proximities. And for you guys in Ukraine, we are developing tools. We would be happy to share them with you, to teach you, to train you to use them. We also have colleagues from different universities who can be associated with that. And so we develop this for common good and for radically changing the way we live in cities so we have a higher quality of life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Catherine. Hope you hear this applause to you. Yes, thank you. As a moderator, I have a right to ask the first question. And я попрошу аудиторію підготувати одне, максимум 2 питання. Перше питання буде від мене і ще чекатиму від вас. Catherine, do you hear me? So, my question is, so do you feel or do you calculate or do you have some indicators which shows the reduce in traffic demand and level of traffic or maybe mobility changes in mobility behavior after implementing of your measures? So do you have it, and maybe percentage level or etc.? Thanks.
And they would be different in different cities because there are more than hundreds of cities that are using this model. So in Paris, we know that air quality has jumped 50%. So the air you breathe in Paris is half time better high quality than it was before because you have less cars. The group of scientists that belong to the IPCC, the International Environmental Community, is actually telling that on average, you can reduce by 15% the overall car traffic in cities if you develop walkability and cyclability. So that's for traffic reduction, which then can be monetized into emission, how many emission you don't produce if you have less cars. In terms of demanding, it's about changing behaviors. And we see that in Paris, when you created more than 5,000 kilometers of cyclable lanes, we are measuring the number of bicycles like they do in the Netherlands or in Sweden or in Denmark. And it's several thousands of people every day that are on bicycle. And we are looking at doing this as well in other cities to really shift the traffic. So the measures are in three categories, but we also have multi indicators and scores dashboards. But basically, remember I talked about the well-being. So measures regarding health are really important. Then you have the measures regarding social activity. Are people isolated? Are they alone? Are they engaged in the community? So you can measure that. And then you have environmental measure, and those measures they track the percentage of new biodiversity, the percentage of green, the impact on heat effect island. So there are all kinds of measures, and you can find them on this website. Global Observatory of Sustainable Proximities is collecting case studies and evaluation scores.
Thanks, Катрін. Чи є питання з залу? Бачите, тут мені трохи світло в очах, тому чи є питання з залу, будь ласка? Немає? Подайте голосом, будь ласка, якщо є. So, no question for this time. Katrien, thanks a lot for your inspiring presentation and for your experience. Отже, я запрошую Буркхарда Горна на цю сцену. Буркхард, you're welcome. Для того, щоб він поділився своїм величезним досвідом планування сталої мобільності. І, власне, що цікаво, Буркхард має досвід роботи у Львові, і тому він, власне, працював над планом сталої міської мобільності Львова, розуміє теж і львівський, український контекст, тому це буде не менш цікаво. So, Burkхард, you are welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Igor. I need something to move forward the slides. Is there some kind of clicker to move the slides, or is someone else is doing it? First, thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm really very honored to be here to take part in this really extraordinary event, which is actually quite moving for me. It's the 10th time I'm in Lviv right now, but the last time was in September 2021, before the war. And it's so amazing to see what energy is in this room, and all you young people who want to change your cities into more livable spaces and are working on that so hard and so enthusiastic. That's actually something that we in Germany might be learning from you, how to get the spirit, keep it up in spite of this very, very difficult conditions you're working in. I think this is really great, and I'm admiring that, and I'm actually here to learn from you. I know you want to learn something from me, but I think I can just the same learn quite a lot of you, how to organize these things and to work under these difficult conditions. I will talk about urban mobility on my specific perspective, which is, as Igor has introduced me, I've been working 25 years in municipalities and since 8 years as a consultant. And I've tried to find out for myself what this motto of the conference, building continuity, might mean in terms of urban mobility. I can skip that. I'm not a traffic engineer, perhaps that's important. I'm an urban planner, and I've always tried to view on transport and traffic from the perspective as an urban planner, because it belongs together. That's what I've already heard from Catherine too. What are we talking about? If we talk about the challenges for urban planning and urban transport planning, there's a lot of challenges. You all know this. It's the climate change that is happening, and we have to adapt our cities toward this challenge. We have infrastructure which has to be maintained. You might recognize the picture on the lower left. It's the city of Dresden, the Karola Bridge, which just collapsed one night in last September. It was really pure luck that nothing happened to people. 10 minutes before it collapsed, a tram still was crossing this bridge. And it's, I think, one of the big challenges how we can build infrastructure which is resilient also to be used by different transport modes, and still that our cities can work if something like that happens. And in the end, it all comes to the quality of public space, because public space, this is where we move, where we live, how we experience our cities in aging societies, and how we design public space is crucial if we want to guarantee accessibility to the city, to all kinds of needs of the city, to all uses of the city for everyone who's living there. This is what we want. These pictures from Lviv, from the city center, which we all know very well, which is quite nice. Without cars, you can move freely as a pedestrian. But still, of course, this is the way it is in many of our cities. These pictures are now 5 or 6 years old, but when I came in from the border yesterday by car, it still is quite the same in many parts of Lviv, and of course also in other cities, not only in Ukraine, also in Germany and other West European countries. I've tried to formulate some first thesis about what building continuity might mean in terms of mobility. First, of course, it's transformation. It's a transformation process. We already heard about that quite a lot yesterday and today. And for me, it's not a disruptive process. It's an evolutionary process. It takes time. It takes step by step, but continuously and steadily, not 3 steps ahead and then 2 steps back again, which often happens in some cities if, for example, we have a political change. Not a disruption, but a steady process into the future. And if we talk about resilience, it's about accessibility for everyone, very important. We have to create a mobility system which is at least a little bit resilient to economic problems, financial problems for the cities, that still people can move around, can use public transport and reach the goals they have in the cities. We have to deal with unexpected events. Then still cities have to function and mobility has to function, and everybody has still the possibility to get around in the city. And other things I won't go into detail. We have to have different solutions for different spatial focus. I will talk about that later on. And for me, very important, what is necessary is that we have, as far as possible, a broad consensus in civil society. Where do we want to go? What are our goals? What are the best solutions for our city? Because that guarantees that we have this continuous and stable process changing, transforming our cities. Above all, we heard about this already from Catherine, is that we have to have an integrated approach and an integrated view on the city regarding urban development and mobility. This is the large scale for the whole city, but also regarding specific situations and specific areas in the city. The example from the left is from Freiburg, partner city of Lviv, which is a new housing area quite close to the city center with mixed uses, very few parking spaces, good connection to public transport, high quality of public space. To the right is a conversion of a former British military barrack in Paderborn with just the same approaches like they did in Freiburg. Then you need an overall mobility strategy for your city. Igor already mentioned the Sustainable Urban Mobility Plan for Lviv, where I had the honor to take part in developing this plan. The picture on the left is from Rome, which shows you all the kinds of aspects that mobility strategy has to cover. And some of you who are working on mobility might know this so-called SUMP circle, which is from the guidelines for sustainable urban mobility plans from the European Commission, which shows you that it's actually a circle which starts from a new, if you are through, you start with the preparing of the strategy to get the political backing, to get the resources you need regarding staff and financing. Then you have analysis, and then you develop the guidelines, the vision, the measures, and then you start to implement. You're doing some monitoring, evaluation to see if you are on the right track. And if that's not the case, then you have to adjust your strategy and maybe start again after 5, 6, or 7 years. I already talked about the necessary differentiated spatial focus. This is actually quite similar to one of the slides Catherine just showed you. It's from Zurich, which shows you on the bottom the regional level with all the main tracks of the regional public transport, with the borders to the cities nearby to Zurich. Then you have the city level with the arterial roads network, with the public transport network, and then you come to the neighborhoods which have different needs regarding mobility and public space, and maybe this even more specific, some kind of super blocks, as you know, from Barcelona and other European cities, to design very high quality public space in your neighborhood. You need some kind of vision to know where you want to go. What's the goal? How does your city should be regarding mobility and quality of public space? This is an example from Amsterdam. They had developed this long-term vision together with the civil society in a long process, aiming at 2050 and beyond. And they showed the different possible paths if you have still a more car-oriented policy or a more people-oriented transport policy. And this is kind of a common goal of the city, how they want to develop their quality of life in the city. And then they started implementing it also together with concrete specific projects in the neighborhoods. And this is what the results are. It's not spectacular, but it's still a huge improvement of the public space. That's where people are experiencing mobility in their own situations where they live. And that's, of course, also the way to get them convinced that it's the right strategy the city has chosen. That's also already has something to do with communication and participation. Amsterdam shows it, Paris has showed it, as we just already heard from Catherine. This is an overview of all the possible tools and formats Paris offers for the people to take part in this development, to make their decisions, to participate in developing specific projects and solutions. And they also, so for example, you have this public votes. You might have heard about this. This was, I think, beginning of this year. No, it was last year, to reduce the space for these big SUV vehicles, which take up a lot of space with not that much more use for the cities. Or they have their own workshops together with the city council, with the city planners, to develop their own neighborhoods. And also what you see what's coming out of that, it's not spectacular, it's not a revolution, but it's an evolution on small scale, which creates just much more livability and quality of public space. Of course, you can talk about redesign of public space also on a larger scale and also on much larger roads, also on the main roads. Last year there was an exhibition in Berlin. It was made by a society of urban planners and architects. They were celebrating their 200th Jubilee, and they made this exhibition about urban streets in Berlin in the past and in the future. And they asked 10 quite prominent architects to develop their vision for a specific street in Berlin. It's very interesting. I will show you the link to if you want to learn more about that. And I've picked out 3 examples which are, for me, the most interesting because they seem quite realistic. There were other examples which create really great visions about a street that actually doesn't look like a street anymore. But for me, some of these visions are actually too ambitious. I think they are not really realistic because they don't have to do enough with real life in the city. These 3 ones I think are interesting. This is from Gerkan, Mark and Partner, GMP Architects. You might know them. The Lietzenburger Straße in the west of Berlin. And there you still see some kind of streets. You see autonomous public transport, lots of bicycles and lots of pedestrians around. The next example is from another area which is close to Berlin. It's Potsdam, and it shows you a street which also is part of the city. Sometimes we only look to the city center because that's, of course, what everyone knows. Also, politics are often focused in the city centers, but we have problems just as well at the outskirts, in the peripheric areas of the city. And this is an approach which also combines architecture and building with transport planning. It doesn't deny that there still would be cars in the future, but they take away some lanes. They put up a big, large greenery in the city, and they create a new urban space by architecture. The last example is by Jan Kleishus and Heike Hanada, which also is not very spectacular. It's quite a small intervention, which creates in the Linden Street in Berlin a new atmosphere by an additional architecture, which creates a new spatial space in this street, and connected with greenery, more climate resilience, and more public space quality. And this is actually could be started tomorrow. It's not a vision for the next 20 years. And actually, to the left, down to the left, you can see the internet web link if you want to learn more about this exhibition and the results. Finally, an example which actually exists and which is right now being realized. It's from Hamburg. It's the Jungfernstieg, quite prominent in the city center, and where during the pandemic the city started to think about redevelopment of the street. There have been at that time still 13,000 cars a day, separating the business district from the Alster Lake, and they started with a temporary measure, just reducing the space in the middle by a temporary strip in the middle with some temporary greenery. And finally, they decided that the most benefit for the people and for livability and for pedestrians would be to add this space to the promenade, to the boulevard on the rear side, to reduce the car space, and with the result that right now there are less than 1,000 cars left using this street. Public space, of course, is crucial, but you have to organize a lot of measures to create the possibility to redesign this public space. You still have a lot of cars. You can't wish them away. They will still be there. One, I think, crucial issue is that people who live in the city shouldn't be dependent on a single transport mode. They should have possibilities to walk around, to use the bicycle, to use maybe car sharing, maybe also their own car, but only if it's really needed. So multimodality is one very important word in this context. This example is from Gothenburg. They're also doing a lot of things fostering cycling, public transport. This is what they call a micro-mobility hotel. They put together offers regarding personal transport and freight transport. It's it's a micro hub where you pick up your parcels. There's a shop, there's a handyman hub. If you have to repair your bike, you find everything there that you need for your daily life mobility. And they are doing this as a pilot project together with some companies, and they want to develop this project into other parts of the city. This also means often if we talk about future mobility, we only think about the passengers and the people, the personal transport. But it's also, of course, always also about logistics. Logistics is indispensable for city life. You have to get your goods. You have to get rid of disposal and waste and so on. So you should never forget that if you are developing your strategies and also designing streets, you still have to think about how you're going to manage city logistics in all the different aspects they have for the city. That also already brings me to not the end, but one last issue which is important, of course. Often you heard, especially from some companies, new technology is the big thing. If we just implement this specific new technology, we can solve all our problems in the city. Of course, that doesn't work. We need new technology, but as part of the solution, it's not the solution itself. This picture is also this rendering is from Hamburg, where they will start this summer with the first autonomous driving public transport shuttle in public space, in real life, for everyone to use. And if some of you might be at the UITP Congress next week in Hamburg, you might test these new vehicles. And it also should show, this rendering is supposed to show you if we combine new technologies with other aspects of transport policies and mobility strategies, we can actually gain the space we need for the redesign of public space to be of high quality, to be climate resilient, and all the other aspects. Finally, what we are doing here today and tomorrow and yesterday is actually learning from each other, networking, looking at ideas from others and trying to see what does it mean for me, can it help me? It's not about copy and paste. Copy and paste is almost never the best solution for your cities. That's all what we always said to Igor and his colleagues when we talked about the sum of live. You can learn from other cities, but you have to find your own solution which fits to your specific needs as a city. This picture is from last year in Madrid. It's it's from a small city network on sustainable mobility, which I'm honored I have the honor to manage. And it's something like 13 or 14 big cities in Europe are meeting once a year to discuss very openly in not public settings their specific problems on a specific topic. And if you would take a closer look on this picture, you could see on the right Orest Oleskiv and Oleg Zabarillo from the city of Lviv. Lviv is part of this network since 2 years, and what we are doing there is actually this kind of collaboration, networking, and learning from each other, but not copy and paste. Find the best solution for your own city. On the right, on the bottom, you find the web link to these organizations, and you can find every presentation from every city that has been shown during the last years. And actually, most of the examples I just showed you from these cities, you can also find there if you have a look at it. To come to a summary in 2 slides with some written words. First is, of course, there are some recommendations for planning. Actually, what I already said, you have to start with the demands of the people, of the inhabitants, but also the visitors, just like a city with lots of tourists like Lviv, and the economics and other parts of society. And then you need this overall strategy, which has to be combined with the urban development plan, be it a city of 15 minutes or something else, which Catherine just showed us, but this always linked together with your mobility strategy. And also just try to look for cooperation with the region around your city, because commuting is a big problem for almost every city. We have to of course, also find solutions for that. Maybe even create agglomerations to have a common approach to your mobility problems with between the city and the regions. And then, of course, you develop the measures you need on different scale, public transport, for other transport modes, for redesigning public space, and of course also for regulation. Regulation is also important, starting with parking, speed limits, and other aspects. And last but not least, communication and information is crucial. But at least also as important as these specific planning approaches and solutions is the process and how you deal with politics. Because you can have the best strategy, you can have the best measures, if you don't have the backing of politics, if you don't have the resources you need, if you don't have the support of civil society, you won't have success. So one is involve your politicians as early as possible if you start these kind of processes and strategies, because you need their backing, and try to also create a broad consensus in politics, because if you have an election and then other majorities after these elections, you will need still the support of politics and the money you need and the staff to implement your strategy. You should be based on realistic financial assumptions, not create a vision that can't be implemented because you don't have the resources you need. You might be able to try with some temporary pilot projects just to test things before really to spend real big money for make it manifest for a longer time, and also for everyone to learn and see what benefit could change mean, also for his personal situation. You shouldn't put the expectations too high because, as I already said, if you put them too high and then you don't be able, or you aren't be able to realize it, then you create disappointment, and that's also nothing you would need if you want to change your city. 3 last slides with one picture and one sentence as a really very basic summary. You need time, you need patience, and you have to think broad if you want to implement change. The second is learn from other cities, learn from temporary pilot projects, create your own networks, and be always open to innovation and try to implement this into your city. And the last one is about the scale you're thinking. Even if you're coming from the spatial focus, from the region, it always, at the end, comes down to public space, because public space is the place where people see if change is good for them or not. And walking is still the most important scale if you're thinking about design of public space. It's a long road we're on, and it will take still a lot of time for every one of you and for myself in our work. And that's what actually you need: patience, endurance, pragmatism, and courage. And I think that's something that you all have learned in these last years, especially in Ukraine, also for other reasons. And I think if someone will be able to redesign the streets regarding these 4 things you need, then I think you will make it in Ukraine. I'm very optimistic, and I think also in this we will be able to learn a lot from you, we coming from abroad, from your resilience as a people, as citizens, and I wish you all the luck you need for your future, for your city, and for your country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Burkhard. Дуже дякую, Бурхарде, за цю чудову презентацію і дуже важливі акценти, які от прийшли власне у кінці презентації, що плануючи місто, плануючи пересування, ми маємо бачити в центрі не машину, не вид транспорту, а людину і її потреби. I would like to ask one question as a moderator. If we talk about mobility planning and sustainable mobility planning, could you show which modern challenges cities faces too? So not existing ones like bad public transport, something like this, but new ones which are current for today.
Well, new challenges, I think everybody's talking about the challenge to adjust our city to climate change, which means we need more greenery, more place for water, more shade in the city. But I think that's already known and people are working on it. We have seen the examples from Paris and from other cities. Still, it's difficult because you need the space and therefore you need the strategy. I think the biggest challenge for me right now, if I'm working in other cities, is actually to create this spirit in the city, in the city civil society, that they need the change, that they have the support from politics, that they have the support from the business, that they also realize that this change is needed. And right now, at least in Germany, we have a very difficult political discussion. Actually, everybody is tired of talking about change. They just want to keep it the way it is, but that doesn't work. So we need actually a process, and we need public discussions about how we are going to, how do we want to live in the cities. And I think we can learn also there from some cities how it is going, but also cities like Amsterdam or Barcelona have backlashes. They have also some problems with politics and with the consensus. So we start actually with the people to discuss with them, how do you want to live? What is the benefit that you can gain from change? And then I think it's easier for everyone also to implement the measures. And that's actually, for me, that's the biggest challenge.
Thanks, Burkhard. Дякую, Бурхарде. Питання з залу, будь ласка, піднімайте руки і подамо вам мікрофон. Чи є питання з залу, будь ласка? Ліхтарі світять і вас не дуже видно. Я бачу, що в нас є так в залі колега, хто може допомогти з мікрофоном. Чи є питання до Буркхарда? Ну тоді гучними оплесками дякуємо за цю презентацію. А я маю, перед тим, як ми перейдемо до наступної лекції, я маю до вас питання. Хто знає, що відбулося у Львові в 1861 році? Залізниця. До Львова прийшла залізниця. Точно. Звідки вона прийшла? Конкретніше? Найближче місто, з якого вона прийшла? Перемишль. А хто знає, що відбудеться ближчим часом? До Львова знов прийде залізниця. І звідки? З Перемишля. Власне, так, Львів є одним, напевно, найстарішим містом, в якому є залізниця, якщо говорити про Україну. І, власне, Львівський залізничний вузол є одним з найбільших за кількістю напрямків. Тобто, напевно, жодне українське місто не має стільки напрямків з вузла, як є у Львові. У Львові це 8 чи 9 напрямків, куди можна поїхати поїздом. Більше того, у Львові стикаються електрифіковані і неелектрифіковані лінії. У Львові стикаються лінії електрифіковані змінною напругою і постійною. Тобто вже зараз Львів є доволі великим вузлом з точки зору функціонування цього залізничного транспорту. Водночас, зважаючи на розміри України, ми розуміємо, що не обійтися без довгих поїздок, які є, очевидно, пов'язані з залізницею, якщо ми говоримо про пасажирське сполучення. Очевидно, що через Львів проходить вантажне сполучення. І очевидно, що у Львова є його агломерація і його близькі міста, які потребують регіонального чи цього локального приміського сполучення. І всі ці потреби сходяться у Львові. Львів теж, до Львова, власне, знову прийде колія. І все це ставить перед нами питання, як цей залізничний вузол має функціонувати. Більше того, цей вузол не будь-де. Цей вузол практично в центрі Львова. Станція Підзамча – це менше кілометра до площі Ринок. Львівський залізничний вокзал фактично це чудовий пішохідний маршрут півгодини до центру міста. Тобто залізниця у Львові є дуже тісно інтегрована в міський простір, в міську тканину, і нам потрібно зрозуміти, як цей вузол буде розвиватися. Отже, вітаємо нашого третього лектора Лотара Целлера, який, власне, розкаже нам про бачення того, як буде розвиватися Львівський залізничний вузол в контексті того, що сюди, власне, з цих поточних проблем і потреб, які має залізниця тут, а також з тим, що буде, коли сюди прийде колія 1435, чи те, що ми називаємо вузька колія, європейська колія. Отже, Lothar, welcome. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Ihor. I will try to take you in my presentation through certain elements which are relevant for the future of Lviv. First of all, I want to show you what you are going to challenge in the upcoming years. But I also want to build bridges between transport planning and urbanistic planning. Bridges between what we are doing on the European side and what we are doing here on the Ukrainian side, but also bridges between the different disciplines. Now, I'm coming from an entity called JASPERS, and we have been entrusted by European institutions to guide countries through the accession process. Once countries are member of the EU, we accompany them to build up a sustainable system. Not only transport, environment, water, urbanistic planning. But I'm not the only one here from my team. I'm very happy that two of my colleagues are here as well, Tetjana and Rafa. This is just for matchmaking afterwards. And I'm very happy that a good friend of ours and the brain and heart of Ukrainian railways for the future development and also for the integration of the Ukrainian railway system into the European railway system is also with us, Oleg. But before I start my presentation here, I want to take you through one concept which is very important. And this concept we call discontinuity concept. What is that? You are not like most of the European cities we are working with. You were exposed to a discontinuity which is significant. And this was a war, and is the war. And if we want to prepare you for the future, simple reconstruction is by far not good enough. What we need to do is we have to prepare you, and you have to prepare yourself for the challenges ahead of you in the next 20, 30 years. And this is very difficult because we transport planners. We love conservative systems. We are collecting data, we are analyzing them, we are trying to predict trends, and accordingly, we are shaping the system. But this is not the case for Lviv, and this is not the case for Ukraine. What we have to do here is to zoom out, and we have to understand how you want to shape your future. Now, the first thing in this respect is the integration of Ukraine and Lviv in the European transport system. And you might believe it's a vision, might not happen so soon. In fact, it is ongoing. If you look at the timeline, we started working in Ukraine 22. Ukraine already became a member or a partner in the European Connecting Europe facility, meaning, unlike many other countries who have accession status, Ukraine has access to these type of fundings. And what we did, we are focusing on the border crossing points. Now, meanwhile, the first project is almost ready, and this project is very relevant for you. It's the first project of the European railway system pointing at Lviv. And this is the opening of the project between Chop and Uzhgorod. This will happen on the 24th of April. And this is the first step, but more steps are going to come. All this is based on a strategy which was done in the recent years and is still under development. And if you look at these red lines, you can see that Lviv is in the center point of European integration. That means that in the future, in the near future, you will have European railway system arriving at Lviv, not only from Poland, Mostiska, but also from Chop, which is connecting Slovakia and Hungary, but also from Vadul-Siret, which is connecting Romania. And in the center point is Lviv, and this will create specific challenges for you. What are these challenges? First of all, you have to understand the system TEN-T, the Trans-European Network. Now, what is the difference between countries who are very successful in their economic development and countries which are not so successful? One critical aspect is the linking between the planning and the funding. And I'm not only talking about public funding. Ukraine is going to face, as of 28 actually, a new funding area. For the first time, Ukraine will be part of European funding system and you will be programmed as such, but also private funding. But how do you want to attract private funding? The first important part is that you do good planning. This is what you are doing actually. The second step is you have to carve the planning in stone. You have to make commitments, your state has to be commitments to develop certain measures. And only then the private sector is willing to take the risk to invest. If we are credible in doing so, you will see a fascinating aspect that the private sector will even overtake sometimes public funding because that's business. The TEN-T is the first carving in stone of what I mentioned before. You can see these lines. You can see the green lines. It's the so-called railway TEN-T system. And you can see the prioritization. These are these lines which are red, blue, and lilac, which are the priority corridors. Again, you can see Lviv is in the center. Now, why are we so eager to bring the European railway system to Ukraine? Because it has many advantages. One of the big problems we have is that the transshipment between the Ukrainian gauge and the European gauge is an economic friction. And it takes a long time to bring people across the border. When you will be member of the EU, there will be no borders, especially if you join Schengen. But this friction will remain. In order to overcome this friction, we extend our system, which has a higher system capacity because it was developed and it's constantly under technological development. You will have immediately access to a huge number of rolling stock which can operate on these lines. And in reality, we are defining an economic development axis. The future of logistics is green. And if you want to deal with logistics without considering the decarbonization, and railways is the main thought of decarbonization, then you will not attract private investments. So what we can expect is that along this development axis, stretching from Chop up to Lviv, or from Mostiska to Lviv, or from Vadul-Siret to Lviv, we will have a number of facilities which will serve the purpose of reindustrialization of Ukraine, which will serve the purpose of green logistics and economic development. Now, this economic development axis, and you heard all the principles, I don't want to repeat them, according to which we try to develop our systems. One important principle which became one of the key aspects of our investments is military mobility. We have to make sure that you have a sustainable military mobility axis which allows you to create a sustainable peace. But we will also get intermodal hubs. And intermodal hubs here are not transshipment facilities. What we are planning to do is to basically take the freight from the road in the wide Lviv agglomeration and transfer it on the railway side. Now, it's not enough if we are thinking what to do here in Ukraine, because these axes are running, for example, down to the northern Adriatic ports. At the moment, the backbone of your logistics and of your military survival is the development through Poland to Gdansk. What our ambition is to open new arteries for you through Hungary down to Croatia and the other northern Adriatic ports. For example, you can see some projects. We also have to start thinking how to integrate you into the high-speed railway system. We also have to look into the possibilities of port development and the corridors which are leading to the borders from Bratislava. These are the access points. Notwithstanding the fact that the majority at the moment is running through Poland. When we are doing that, when we are developing these axes, you will see that the cooperation between the two countries or more countries is highly important. And this takes us to an aspect which I want to highlight a bit later, stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement on the large level, but also stakeholder engagement on the micro level. This is the Lviv note. As you can see at the moment, the working document. We are going to start this exercise by end of the year. And by doing this exercise, we try to reach certain objectives. Now, one objective is to take heavy freight rail traffic out of the city. Meaning, we will try to create a bypass through the city center, and this frees space, public space, for other purposes, for other functionalities. Now, Lviv doesn't have a high-capacity public transport system, as we call it, backbone system. One possibility we are going to check is whether the railways can serve as one part of this public backbone system. But we are not limiting it to Lviv city, we go into the agglomeration. Still, we need to secure the transmissibility of 1520 system in order to reach our transshipment facilities, which are usually located at the borders. Lviv will become also for passengers the entrance gate. So the plan is that you will be able to switch the gauge here in Lviv, trains arriving from all over Ukraine, and by switching you already do all the customs facilities. Other objectives, I don't want to go into details now because you heard many of those, redistribution of public space. But what could that mean? And here I want to make a very short stretch to our methodology which we are trying to apply. We are working, and you are familiar with that, you are academics. We are working with hypotheses. So we are analyzing, and with public participation and stakeholder engagement, we are trying to identify where are the issues, where are the problems, where are the opportunities, where are the threats. You might have heard it, it's SWOT, strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, but it's much more than that. It's a way of guiding your analytical process. You see some of the hypotheses, and there are many more already collected, and they are part of this assessment. And then we are coming to the option analysis, which will be a complex process of interrelated opportunities and options you have. And here we are not only talking about infrastructure, we are talking about operations primarily, from which we are going to deduct later on the infrastructure. As I promised to be short with my presentation, let me talk just a little bit about the stakeholder engagement. What is that? I already mentioned some stakeholders. We are talking here about the road development, the rail development, the public transport, the regional authority, the local authority. We are talking about EU institutions, the donors, the private sector. We are talking about the population. All these entities need to be involved in a healthy process because it's a very, very long-term plan. And we want to put Ukraine into the opportunity to adopt, when you come to the negotiations with the institutions, with the donors, that you adopt a active approach, not a passive approach. We don't want you to wait until somebody's telling you you get 2 billion for Lviv. We want you to say, this is the city we want to live in. This is how we get there. This is the money we need. Now it's up to you to raise the funding. That's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your kind attention.